everyone, Greg Braden here. And I want to begin by thanking you for taking a moment to click on the link that's connecting you and me in this moment. We're living a time of extremes, and that's what I want to talk to you about right now. You know, a lot of people in our community have unplugged from the mainstream media and have unplugged from the sources of information that help us to understand and make sense of what's happening in our world today. A lot of times that media can be misleading, and I think that's the reason that they've unplugged. So what I'd like to do, I put together just a brief presentation to address so many of the concerns that are coming into my office. We are inundated, as you can imagine, with questions about what's happening and what's not happening. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of misinformation that is circulating, a lot of disinformation that is circulating as well, trying to get people to support very specific kinds of agendas. And within the misinformation and the disinformation, there are sprinklings of facts. And it's sometimes hard to know where one ends and another begins. So I want to begin by saying I'm a scientist. I am not a life scientist. I'm an earth scientist. I'm a degree geologist with a very strong background in the life sciences. And I say that because that background helps me to sift through the very technical journals, the scientific papers, the peer-reviewed journals that are constantly being published to understand better what the new discoveries are telling us, what are scientists, the real scientists that are working behind the scenes, not pop scientists, what are they now discovering, and what do their discoveries mean to us in our everyday lives and our experience. So I'm going to honor your time. I'm going to go directly into a presentation because I want you to see what this virus is all about, what it means to us, and perhaps most importantly, what it is that we can do about this virus in our lives to help us and our families as we navigate through this very intense time. What I want to tell you is I am an optimist by nature, but I'm also a realist. And I think we have very real reasons to be optimistic if we honor what the information is telling us. So let's take a look at this presentation. I'm going to begin the presentation by calling this virus the coronavirus, but by the end, I will be using its official name, and I think you'll understand why. You know, my experience is that when the facts are clear, our choices become obvious. It's when we don't understand what it is that's happening to us that we become confused, we become very frightened, and there is a lot of fear in our world right now. And I'm hoping that this presentation will alleviate some of that for you and your family and your friends that you choose to share this with. So in this program, I'm going to talk about the coronavirus. What is it? What is this virus? We've got all kinds of questions, and people don't understand even what it is that's changing our lives and our world. Where did it come from? How is it transmitted? What does it do to our bodies? What can we do to prevent it from wreaking havoc within our bodies? And what can we expect in our lives and in our world? So I'm going to begin with the very beginning. What is this coronavirus? It is just that. It is a virus. And for me, that is both one of the most mysterious as well as fascinating parts of what's happening. Because a virus, by definition, is something, it's very simple, very, very small. It's very difficult to even see it with a microscope. It's made of genetic material, so DNA and RNA. It's just some DNA and RNA protected by a shell that is made of proteins. And the reason I'm emphasizing this is because the question is, why can't we use antibiotics to take care of this like we would, a common infection? Is a virus even alive? And it's a very good question because by definition, I want you to see this, the definition, the scientific definition, biological definition of something that is alive is it fulfills a number of criteria. Living things, they're made of cells. They have a metabolism, just like we have our metabolism. They use energy, they grow and develop over time. They have a definite, a finite lifespan. There's a time where they begin, a time where they end. They're capable of reproducing their own species. Something that is alive is capable of reproducing its own species, and it responds to external stimuli. A virus doesn't meet any of these criteria. It's not even a cell, has no metabolism, no respiration, doesn't grow, and it doesn't develop. The lifespan is dependent upon the host that it finds itself in. And this is what's really interesting. It doesn't even reproduce itself. It is essentially what's called inert. So a virus can sit on a surface and is just sitting on the surface until it finds itself in the presence of another living cell. It must have a living cell to attach to inject its genetic material, its DNA, into the DNA of the cell. And then the virus's DNA actually becomes part of the DNA of that cell. You'll see that in just a moment. So here's the first question: is it even alive? There's a lot of controversy around this, but by this biological standard, the virus that is wreaking havoc on our world isn't even a life form. It's not even alive. So this is important because it's not a hunter. I've had people that are asking us, is this virus stalking me? Is it hunting me? Is it out to get me? The virus is not a hunter. It's not actively searching for us. And that's going to be important when we begin talking about what we can do about this virus in our lives. What does a virus look like? I want you to see this because it's also going to be important when we talk about what we can do to prevent this virus or ease the effects of the virus in our bodies and our lives. This is an electron photograph of the coronavirus. This is called COVID-19. You'll understand why in just a moment. This was from the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the organization you're hearing so much of if you are watching any of the mainstream media. But I want to show you another one of the early pictures of this virus. It's a black and white image you're seeing on your screen. And what I want to call your attention to is the little spikes that are on the periphery of each of these, on the virus. You can see there, you can see where the arrows are pointing to those little spikes. I'm going to show you an artist's conception of the coronavirus. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see those spikes much better. These spikes are going to be really important in just a moment because if those spikes are not there, or if somehow they are impaired, it's impossible for that virus to infect our cells. And that is precisely an opportunity that we have through some of the herbal supplements, some of the other supplements that nature provides for us. I'm going to talk to you antiviral supplements. I'm going to talk to you about those toward the end of this presentation. So where does this come from? Where does this COVID-19 even come from? I'm going to be very honest with you. The truth is right now, we don't know for sure. There are a lot of stories out there. Mainstream media is telling us that it has originated in another form of life, a bat perhaps, that it jumped species. And there are some journals that are saying that. There are other journals that are saying some other things. For me, I want to tell you where I am with this right now. We're dealing with this. Wherever it came from, it's with us, it's present. We've got to get through this. I think when it's over, the research is going to pinpoint precisely where and how this virus originated. For me right now, I'm more focused on you, your family, your health, me, my family, my health, and what we can do to get through this. So that's what I'm going to say about where it has come from. We have been receiving, when I say we, it's my office. We've been receiving emails and questions, people asking, are there multiple viruses out there? Why are there so many different names for this virus that we're concerned with? Well, there is one virus, and it has gone through an evolution in terms of the names. I'm just going to be very honest with you. How can we deal with what life brings to our doorstep unless we're honest about what life brings to our doorstep? And that's what I feel about this right now. This originally was called the Wuhan virus because the first reported case was in the city of Wuhan in China. The World Health Organization and CDC have worked over recent years not to identify a virus with any animal or any location because of the stigma that comes with that. We've got the swine flu, and so people were afraid of pigs, and we've got the bird flu, and people were afraid of birds. If you name it after a city, that city has a stigma forever. So very quickly, we have now evolved. It's no longer called the Wuhan virus, technically. The scientific name, and I want to share this with you because the scientists will identify a virus by one name, and then the condition that the virus causes by another name, and that's precisely what's happening here. So technically, the name for this virus that is wreaking havoc on our planet right now is SARS-CoV-2, SARS-CoV-2. That virus is creating a condition that is now technically called COVID-19. So this is the name that I'm going to use in the presentation. This is the name you're seeing in the media, COVID-19, because it was discovered in the year 19. D means it's a disease, VI means it's a virus, and the CO is the type of virus. It is a strain of coronavirus. Coronaviruses have been around for a very long time. We've probably all had them before in other common colds and flus. This is a very unique kind of coronavirus. So now you know the secret code for the designation. CO is coronavirus, VI is virus, D means disease, and -19 is the first year. It was in the fall of 19 when it was first recognized. We've seen this before. HIV, for example, is the virus that is responsible for the condition that we know as AIDS. Rubella is the virus that is responsible for the condition that we know as measles. So this is a convention, and I want you to see why this works the way it works. So for the rest of this program, it's COVID-19. The director of the World Health Organization is very clear about what this is and is not. It is definitely not the flu. And many people are writing to us saying, well, what's the big deal? Isn't this just the flu? Don't we treat this, like we treat the flu? I want you to see why it is not the flu. And it's the distinction that separates COVID-19 from the flu that makes it so important to you and me. And it's the reason that the world is shutting down right now. So this is a quote from the director of the World Health Organization. He said, quote, "This virus is not SARS. SARS was the severe acute respiratory syndrome discovered a few years ago. It's not MERS, the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome is discovered a few years ago, and it is not influenza. It is not the common flu." Now, it may have some of the common symptoms of the flu, but you're going to see in just a moment what it is that sets it apart. So a seasonal flu, for example, a flu can happen as a result of a number of different strains of virus. COVID-19, it's the result of only one virus, the virus that we just identified. And according to the director of the World Health Organization, it's much more severe than the seasonal flu. And this actually makes sense if you think about it. The common flu has been on Earth for at least 2,000 years that we are aware of through some of the archaeological discoveries and some of the technological advances. We can determine that the common flu has been with us for over 2,000 years. That means our bodies have had 2,000 years to develop antibodies and to understand how to deal with the common flu. This is something new. Our bodies have not seen this before, and it's going to take a season, or at least a season, for our bodies to understand and reprogram our immune systems so that we can adapt to this virus. And we can, and we do. Our bodies are actually very good at this. And I'll talk to you about that more at the end as well. The mortality rate for seasonal flu is typically very low for these reasons. It's been around for a long time. We know what to do with it. Less than 1%. Right now, the mortality rate is believed to be around 3.4%, and those numbers keep changing. But this, again, it comes from the World Health Organization. So let me show you what this means. This is a chart from CDC, Center for Disease Control, and it is showing the relative ages that are succumbing to this virus, that are dying from the virus. And what you're seeing, is that the higher death rates, the higher mortalities are in older citizens. And typically you see this with influenza as well. And the thinking, and I'm not saying I agree with this. I agree that what I'm going to say could be possible for some people. It doesn't have to be possible. The thinking is that our immune response declines as we increase in chronological age. As we get older, we lose our immunity. That certainly can happen. My experience, it doesn't have to happen. And it depends a lot on the choices we make of all the things: lifestyle, diet, exercise, nutrition, all the things, we're going to talk about that. But typically, and this is what they're showing, typically, this is what's happening. Interestingly, there have been, as of this talk, as of my sharing this time with you right now, no one under the age of 9 has died from this. And that makes sense because young people have very strong immune systems. And where you see the 60 to 69 age group, this is the age group that we were looking at a moment ago. We were looking at just a moment ago. Here you can see on the right-hand side is COVID-19. On the left-hand side is the typical flu. And what you see is for that 65 plus age group, 0.83%, you see when you're looking at the COVID-19, you're seeing that it is that 60 to 69 is 3.6% according to this chart. So I said we've got different numbers. So what I want you to see here is that this flu, or this, not this flu, what I want you to see here is that this condition has a much higher mortality rate than typical flu. And this is one of the reasons there's so much concern about what's happening. It's new, our bodies don't know what to do with it, and it does have a higher mortality rate. Why does it have a higher mortality rate? Well, to answer that, you have to understand what it does to us. So I'm just going to go through a little scenario very quickly right here. The image you're seeing on your screen, the large sphere on the right is a human cell, kind of the pinkish colored sphere. And the little spiky things that you're seeing, some of those are red, some are orange, some are blue. These are viruses relative to the cell. And we saw these a few minutes ago. Here, I'm going to bring up another image. Those little spikes are what make all the difference in the world, because those spikes are looking for places on the cell that will receive and accept the virus. They're called receptors. And this particular virus apparently has characteristics that make it more accessible or allow more receptors to be accessible to these spikes. In other words, it has a greater opportunity to attach to the cell than some others do. So when it does, here's what's happening. What you're seeing on your screen right now, the upper part of the quarter of a circle, if you will, on the upper part of the screen, that is the virus. The red that is dangling down is the spike on the virus, just like you're seeing those red spikes on the one to the left. The blue at the bottom is the receptor that is sitting on top of the human cell beneath that. So what's happening is these spikes, the proteins, those red proteins, they are finding more opportunities to bind to the blue, the enzymes on the human cells, than we've seen in some of the other viruses. So it makes it, we become more susceptible from that perspective. Once that binding happens, here's what then happens. It's like biology 101 in a high school biology class, but I'm going to go ahead. I know this is redundant for some people, and for others, this is going to be important. It helps to understand what we can do about it. The virus, once it attaches to the cell, it begins to share its genetic information with the DNA inside the cell. Number two, you can see the genes become incorporated. So the virus's genes actually become part of our cell's DNA. They hijack that DNA. This is the term that's used. And then because our cell is reproducing, it begins to replicate with that virus information. The viral information is now in our cell's DNA, and it does that to the point where it will actually destroy the cell. It will kill the cell, and the DNA that has been replicated containing the virus then explodes and begins to share and spread that viral information into other cells. And that's what you can see in step number 4 there. So I was hesitating. I don't want to be too complex, but I want you to see exactly what it is that's happening. Now, the good news, the really good news, is that your body knows exactly what to do when it sees these viruses. We've had viruses for thousands of years. Viruses are a big part of our body. In addition to the genome, we have what's called the human virome. We always have viruses in our bodies. Not all of them are harmful, what we call harmful viruses. So we know very well what to do with these. And while the virus is attaching to those cells and injecting its DNA, look at what's happening. Our body is identifying that virus. It's sending out what are called leukocytes. specialized cells to attach to the virus so the virus can be destroyed. So this is the battle that happens when we are infected. What it does for us when that battle is happening. We may not know all that's going on. Here's what we know. These are symptoms of COVID-19 compared to other conditions that we commonly have. So we're talking about, fever, dry cough, shortness of breath, headaches, all those things. With COVID-19, it's common to have a fever. And one of the reasons for that is because your body is fighting this off. When your body elevates its core temperature, it makes the body less hospitable to the invader. And that's one of the reasons that we'll have a fever when we're having these experiences. It's also common to have the dry cough, shortness of breath. You might have a headache, you might have aches and pains, you might have sore throat, you might have fatigue. Rarely are you going to see a loose stool, diarrhea. Rarely are you going to have a runny nose, and that's important because people that believe, they're not feeling well and they think, well, maybe I've got the virus. If they've got a runny nose, what the experts are telling us is it's a really good chance it's not COVID-19. You might have a cold, could be a flu, but it's probably not the COVID-19. And sneezing, you don't see sneezing. Now, I live in the high deserts of northern New Mexico, my wife and I do. This happens to be allergy season here. The juniper pollen is all over. It's like dust blowing across the walks and the streets and our sidewalks. And so we are feeling the effects of that as well. And this chart is very, very reassuring because a lot of us are sneezing, have runny noses, doesn't mean we've got that flu. So I wanted you to see this. And I've left it up here intentionally for a couple of minutes. So if you're trying to write this down or you want to capture this some way, you can do that. Big question, how is COVID-19 transmitted? It's still being studied. And we're learning more, we as a society, we're learning more about this. I say we as a society, it's not like I have a team that is doing this. We as a society are learning more about this all the time. What we know right now, I'm just going to share you what has been accepted, and this information is coming from Cold Spring Harbor Laboratories, very respected laboratories associated with major universities and peer-reviewed journals. So primarily it's from physical droplets that are being emitted from a person who's infected, physical contact. So the physical contact can be droplets on our physical body. If we cough or sneeze into our hands, we touch our nose with our hands or our mouth. I see people doing this unconsciously all the time, always playing, with their mouth or nose or, whatever, shaking. And then we are very social beings. We touch other people and other things a lot. And it is that contact, obviously, that can spread this airborne droplets. And this is where some of the new studies may be sharing something you may not be aware of, because not only is COVID-19 spread through coughing and sneezing, the study suggests it is also shared through breathing. Just being in the presence of someone who is breathing, if you're within that distance that puts you too close. They're talking about socially acceptable distances, 6 feet or more. The droplets apparently can linger in the air for up to 3 hours. This is why someone can cough or sneeze, they're gone, and 2 hours later, you're walking through that space, and you may be susceptible to this. This is one of the reasons they're emphasizing the social distancing. I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Also, surface droplets. They're now finding, again, this is from Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, the droplets are viable for up to 2 to 3 days on surfaces of stainless steel and plastic, maybe longer on cardboard. And I don't have the peer-reviewed data on the cardboard, but this, again, is from the same Cold Spring Harbor lab. 2 to 3 days on stainless steel and plastic. What that means, now you know what a virus is. You're all experts on the virus now. It is the DNA, the RNA inside that little protein cap. It means that protein is sitting on the surface. It's not looking for you. It's not looking for anything. It is just sitting there, and the protein can hold up to the environment for about 2 to 3 days. Now, there are things that can change that. Disinfectants can change that. Heat sometimes can change. It has to be very specific temperatures can change that. But eventually that protein shell will break down and the virus is no longer viable. So that 2 to 3 days, The Journal of American Medical Association has published a report saying it's also found in feces. I know it's not a pleasant thing to think about, but this is important because it means when someone is in the restroom, if they are not washing their hands thoroughly, it's possible that they may have the COVID-19 from feces, either direct contact or indirect contact in the bathroom, and that can be then transmitted as well. So it's really important. This is why washing our hands and disinfectant is so important. So the big question, what can we do about this? Well, there's a lot that we can do about it, and this is why I want to share this with you. And I felt like I wanted to empower you with the previous information, the names, where it comes from, what it does. So now what we're going to talk about can make more sense. Antibiotics will not work against a viral infection. We're getting all kinds of emails saying, can we take amoxicillin, or can we take doxycycline, or can we take erythromycin for upper respiratory? Those only work against bacteria, and now you know the reason why, because bacteria are living things. The virus isn't alive, so there's nothing to kill. The antibiotics want to kill the bacteria. There is nothing to kill. That's why I said earlier, it's such a bizarre concept. What we're dealing with is not even alive. It's just a DNA code encapsulated in this protein. So what do? There's some very common sense things here. Wash your hands, and you wash your hands after you touch surfaces. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick example. I was with a friend not long ago in a restaurant in another country. We were eating chips and salsa. So, and they were really good chips and salsa. And my friend got up, went to the bathroom, washed his hands, came back, says, okay, I'm ready to eat the chips. And then he reached across the table and he picked up the salt shaker, salted the chips. Then he picked up the hot sauce in a plastic bottle. And then he started to use the same hand to eat those chips. And I said, are you going to wash your hands again? And he says, I just washed them. And I said, yes. And after you wash them, you touched two surfaces that are touched by hundreds, if not thousands of people over periods of time. Who knows how often they are cleaned? And even if they are cleaned every day, someone could have been here an hour ago that you don't even know about. So for some people, it's overdoing it. I'm just going to leave this up to you. We invite you to become very conscious, be aware of what your hands have touched before you use those hands to place something into your mouth. It's just a way of thinking. It's just a discipline. And I've learned to become very disciplined in my life. And I apply this to myself as well. So you want to wash your hands after you're touching those surfaces. Always cover for a cough or sneeze. Now you know why, because of the droplets. Social distancing is a new buzzword in our media now. A lot of people, it means different things to different people. A lot of people are thinking it means that they need to be in isolation. Well, physical isolation is one thing, but not social isolation. And the truth is, we need one another more than ever right now. Community is more important than ever. We need to talk to one another, to reassure one another, to share with one another, to check things out with one another, because we're social beings. So fortunately, we are having this epidemic in our country, the pandemic in the world, in a technological age where we have the ability to stay in touch. And I'm going to invite you to check in on your loved ones, especially elderly. Check in with your friends. It's really important to stay in touch. And I'm doing my very best to do this for myself right now. All right, I think that's going to be one of the big opportunities. We're developing even stronger communities as we're going through this. I want you to know this, beyond anything else, your body is so smart. Your body is so intelligent. Your body is so sophisticated. You are a technologically advanced, highly sophisticated biological system. You are soft technology. Your body knows what to do with this. That's why we've been here as long as we have been, if we give our body what it needs to do what it was designed to do. So obviously, the first thing to do is to be aware of the physical contact. That's your first barrier. If you should come in contact with a virus, it's not the end, because your body knows what to do. Your immune system is designed to deal with this, and you just saw how when the leukocytes are attacking that virus. The key is to honor your body through all the ways that you know how, so that you have an optimized immune system. strengthen your immune system, relieve the stress that can deplete your immune system. I'm going to talk about all of these. Good sleep is a big part of this. Movement is medicine. Good movement. You don't have to go out and run a marathon. Just make a conscious effort to move. Anything, yoga, floor exercises, a walk in nature, if you can do that and still be socially distant. These are all things that are good for our immune system. Nutrition and supplements. Nutrition is all about the food that we eat. It's beyond what I can do well in this brief program, but I do want to talk to you about supplements. Vitamin C, a lot of misinformation about vitamin C. We can actually tolerate high doses of vitamin C if those doses are in the right form. What you see on a lot of grocery store shelves are not the right form. If it's ascorbic acid, if it is rose hips, those forms of vitamin C our bodies typically cannot tolerate in high doses. What will happen is you become bloated, you become gassy, loose stools. There is a form of vitamin C that is called ascorbate-based. It gives your body what it needs to create that vitamin C, and you can tolerate much higher dosages of that, 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams a day. I don't typically recommend a lot of products by name, but the two that come to mind right now, many of you are already familiar with, little packets of what are called Emergen C, E-M-E-R-G-E-N, and then the letter C, and Trace Minerals. Also has a product of electrolytes, Emergen C, 1,000 milligrams of C per packet, Trace Minerals, 1,200 milligrams per packet, along with the electrolytes that you need to keep your body strong and healthy. So those are examples of ascorbate kinds of minerals. Zinc. If you find that you are exposed or in a situation where you might be, or if you feel like you've already got symptoms, that's the time to use the zinc. I don't do it so much as preventative on a daily basis, only if I'm maybe going to get onto an airplane or I'm going to be in a large public crowd. But there are different kinds of zinc, and I want you to see this here. The acetate form your body can absorb 100% is what's called ionic zinc. The gluconate form, it's pretty good, but not quite as good. About 72% of the zinc is released as ionic zinc. And there's a form that is called zinc gluconate glycine, releases a lower dosage, about 57%. So a lot of the tablets that you will see, the lozenges, if you look on the label, it will say zinc acetate or zinc gluconate. Gluconate is the most common. It's pretty good. So I want you to know about the zinc. Black elderberry really stimulates the immune system well. There's a lot of peer-reviewed literature on the role of and the power, therapeutic power of elderberry in our bodies. The recommended dosages. Now, I'm not recommending. I cannot recommend these for you. I'm showing you. I'm illustrating the kinds of dosages that typically are recommended in the literature. About 158 milligrams 2 times a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. But check with your healthcare provider, as you should for all of these things, to find out what's right for you, or if you have any conditions that may be indicative of you doing something like this. Mushrooms. Our indigenous ancestors discovered this a very long time ago, and they've known about the power, the antiviral power of mushrooms for a very long time. This is from a peer-reviewed journal called Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine. This is a direct quote. Indirect antiviral effects are the result of immunostimulating activity of what are called polysaccharides. This is the key. A lot of the plant kingdom has what are called polysaccharides and these complex molecules, and they are what help us when it comes to viruses. And here's the reason. And I put the little picture up there. Remember the little spikes I talked about early in this presentation? The polysaccharides can help to blunt and diminish the effectiveness of those spikes, so that although the virus may come in contact with a cell, if those little spikes aren't there, if those proteins aren't there, they cannot penetrate the cell. So that's why I've got that little picture up there as a reminder to you. There are a number of different kinds of mushrooms. One of them is a reishi mushroom. Quote, reishi mushrooms, reishi components directly bind to the viruses, interfering with the process in which viruses attach to and enter healthy body cells in order to create the infection. I'm giving you some technical references here. So these are pretty much available. The dosage depends on the concentration of the reishi, how it's prepared, how it's standardized. So you have to really check with your healthcare provider. I can't give you a dosage, but I'm saying that the mushroom itself has these properties. Agarikon mushroom is another mushroom you hear a little bit less about. Look at this, as a quote. It's not only a strong anti-inflammatory and antibacterial agent, but look at this. Its extracts have also demonstrated antiviral properties. There's technical references so that you can see exactly where this is. Again, from the International Journal of Medicinal Mushrooms is partly where this comes from. So scientists have been researching these for a long time. We don't hear so much about it in the West, but you do in Chinese medicine. So traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, has a lot of other remedies, many more than I can go through in this brief presentation. But I want to share with you, this is a quote from the conclusion of a scientific study that was done, again, in the Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine Journal. And this one was from the year 2015, so not that long ago. They studied a lot of Chinese herbs, including yin chow. And yin chow is very common, very accessible here in the United States and here in the West. Some of the others may not be. But when they looked at these ingredients taken together, they tested 10 traditional Chinese medicines, and they showed broad spectrum antiviral activities. And their mechanisms may involve the activation of host immune responses. This is just what we're looking for in the time of a viral pandemic. So I just wanted to share these with you. There are others, and if I didn't list them, it doesn't mean they aren't valid here. I wanted to share some that people are asking about, or maybe the mushrooms that you don't hear quite so much about. So we've covered a lot of ground. I promised I wanted to keep this brief, but also I want you to have the information. What can we expect right now? The answer depends on us. It depends upon how we choose to respond as individuals and collectively. And I'm saying this because I'm receiving emails and I'm seeing there are a lot of people, again, may not be plugged into the media. And I'm not saying that we need to be all the time, but in times like this, it's good to be aware. A lot of people are not taking this very seriously. They are trying to live life as usual. And this is where the struggle comes in. They're trying to live life as if nothing were happening in the presence of a global pandemic that is wreaking havoc on our planet that we've never seen in our lifetime. It makes no sense. The reason that this is happening, and there is a term in psychology to help understand this, is called normalcy bias. We have a tendency to try to average out the extremes that upset our lives and try to discount them and say, oh, you know, life goes on as usual. And life does go on. And how we respond to what's happening right now is completely up to the way, or is completely determining how long we're being impacted by what's happening. So I want to be very honest with you. I'm going to be very straight. Again, how can we deal with what life brings to our doorstep if we're not honest about it? So in all honesty, we have passed what is called the window of containment. This is not going to be contained in the United States or Europe the way the Ebola virus was, or some of the other conditions that we've seen. We passed that window for a number of reasons. It makes no sense to talk about now because that time is past. We are now in what is called the mitigation phase. The definition of mitigation, what does it mean? It is the action of reducing the severity, the seriousness, or the painfulness of something. So it means we're in it, we're going to experience it. It's sweeping across our nation right now. And the experts are saying we're not going to stop it. So if we cannot stop it, all we can do is guide the way that it unfolds. I know many people now are seeing this chart. I want to be very clear about what it's showing. On the left-hand side of your screen, you're seeing a big yellow mound and a red dashed line that goes right through the middle of the screen. That red line is the capacity of our healthcare system to deal with an emergency like this. If we do not follow the mitigation procedures, the social distancing, the cancellation of conferences, of events, of gathering together in groups for exercise, yoga, all of those things that have been normal in our lives. If we do not just chill for a period of time, this is the concern, is that so many cases will evolve so quickly that we will overwhelm the healthcare system as we have it today. We're seeing this happen in some parts of Europe. That is where the big problem is. It's where the highest numbers of mortality rates are. So the idea is, if we can't stop it, let's mitigate how it unfolds. And this is what we're trying to do. It's called flattening the curve. If we can follow some of the guidelines voluntarily, then hopefully that curve will spread. It may last a little longer, but we're going to have less cases. The cases can be managed. That's what we're seeing on this chart right here. Now, I did a little research as a scientist. I'm a researcher, and I want to show you something I think is really interesting. This is a chart of epidemics in the 20th century for different conditions. This is not COVID-19. I'm going to move a little closer so I can read the screen. Smallpox is the one on top. Rubella is next. Mumps is next. Hepatitis A is next. Pertussis is at the bottom. All of these are viral infections except pertussis. Pertussis is a bacteria. But what I want you to see from this, and you can see for yourself, you see the pattern. Where the circles are darker and larger is where most of the cases appear. And there is a pattern. Most of the cases seem to appear in March, April, and May, in the spring months. So you can very clearly see that. And then they begin tapering out into June, July, and August, with the exception of hepatitis, and there are reasons for that. But what we're seeing is typically the epidemic seasons, they fall into this window precisely where we are right now. So now the question is, does COVID-19 fit this pattern? The answer is, we don't know, because we've never experienced this before. If it does, as other coronaviruses have, if it does fit this pattern, then what can we expect? They're talking about a possible peak scenario about 45 days from where we are now, which would put it right around mid-May, and then tapering out, as we saw on that chart, into July and August, if we follow those mitigation procedures. So this is an invitation for all of us to be respectful of not only ourselves, but one another. Not to make this into something political, not to make this into something about power, as many people are trying to do through the emails and some of the social media we're seeing. This is about a virus. It's here. It's with us. We're not going to stop it. And we have the opportunity to mold the way that it unfolds in our communities. So that is the invitation that we're all looking at right now. There will be a time when this is behind us. Later this year, it's going to be in the rearview mirror, and we're going to call this the coronavirus of 2020, and we're going to say, wow, what was that? What now? What happens? Well, even though the virus will be in our rearview mirror, my sense is that we will never go back to the normal that we had before that virus just a few weeks ago. A new normal is emerging. It has to. We cannot go back to the world that we had before, because so much of that world is unsustainable. And where you're going to see this play out is you're going to see shifts in our society, in the way that society works, the way that society manages itself, shifts in our economies. And I want to be clear, when we talk about economies, a lot of people think about money. Economies can involve money, but they don't have to. Economies are about people and the way that people share vital resources that they need every day in their lives, like food, water, energy, medicine, communications, all these kinds of things. And we're going to see a shift probably into more localized living, which is a more sustainable way of living. One of the reasons that the virus is wreaking havoc right now is because supply routes are down, and the things that many of us need for everyday life, including medicines, including antibiotics, including certain kinds of food, including electronics, the supply chains are so global right now and so very fragile. And something like this cuts those supply chains, and all of a sudden you can't get cell phones at your local kiosk, and you can't get the antibiotics from your doctor. If you do, you have to wait a couple of weeks until the next shipment comes in. And I think you're going to see that change as we go back to more localized ways of living. What's that mean? Localized food, localized economies, localized sources of energy, localized businesses. I've talked more about this in other programs. You're going to see shifts in lifestyle that reflect all of these. And I think it will go all the way from dating and the way that we interact in our everyday lives. You're going to see shifts to the generation that we have now. It may not seem so different because this is what they know. But to those of us who know past generations, this is going to seem very different to us. And it's going to be an invitation for us to adapt to a new reality in our world and in our lives as this virus is teaching us more about ourselves and our relationship to ourselves. So I think ultimately, our choices that we make right now are determining what it is that happens next. What I want to say to you very, very clearly, and if you have been with me any time in the last 34 years, this is my 34th year of doing this work in one form or another, you've heard me say this. This is what we're made for. We are made for times just like this. Our bodies are designed to adapt and thrive, not just survive, but thrive, to overcome and thrive what life brings to our doorstep if we allow our bodies to do what they're designed to do. And that means to honor our bodies through healthy choices of nutrition, movement, lifestyle choices. And you know what those are, and you know where, if there is a place, you might be able to honor yourself a little bit greater degree. Wow, now is a perfect time to put that into motion. Put your action plan together right now. Cleaner food, simpler diet, more exercise, stress. The Institute of Heart Math that you've heard me refer to so many times, the research organization in Northern California that I have worked with and shared the stage with almost since their inception in 1991. They have developed the breath and focus techniques around the human heart that allow us to relieve stress in our bodies in ways that are validated through science, and that take about 3 minutes out of each day by harmonizing the heart and the brain, the neurons in the heart and the neurons in the brain, focusing with breath. It's beyond the scope of what I can do well here. Many of you are familiar with it. If you're not, please go to the Institute of Heart Math website, www.heartmath, HEARTMATH.org. All one word, heartmath.org. All kinds of information on there about relieving stress, some that we're conscious of and some that we're not. So this is what I want to leave you with today. I hope you have a little bit better understanding about what's happening. I want to tell you how much I appreciate you sharing a part of your day with me. We've got at least another 4 to 6 weeks where we're being asked just to chill. I'm going to invite you to do your best to do that, not to try to fill your days with diversions. Take this time really to go within, to ask yourself, do I trust my body? What can I do to love and support my body to the greatest degree possible to optimize this magnificent gift of my body? And your answer to that, I think, will determine how you experience what we're going through right now. And here's the key for me. We'll all get through it, but what comes after is being determined by the way we respond right now. That's why I wanted to share this with you today. We're going to get through this together. We're going to be better for it. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me. And watch out for future videos. I'm going to talk about these topics more and more. Take good care.